I'm about to go to Lebanon on Thursday. I'm shooting a documentary about a group of stonemasons who were committed to rebuilding monuments and heritage sites in conflict zones. So it's a director that I've worked a lot with over the last few years, and he phoned up to say, "Do you want to come to Lebanon?" So, at the moment, there's no better time at the moment to try and go on a new adventure. He's sort of really passionate about storytelling and real life storytelling, and so yeah, when he sort of calls to go on an adventure, I'm always kind of keen to go with him, because things take a bit longer. You're only allowed a certain amount of people in a certain space, so you really do go through the process and you become a lot more aware of what every other department's doing. Not that you weren't aware before, but when the circus of a film production, when everything's happening at once, it's easy to take for granted everything else that's going on. So when it's a case of the first AD saying, no, the art department are dressing, the sound department are miking, the grips are laying the track, it does make you really aware of everything that's going on. And I think more willing to help out as well. When you're watching it happen, you can say, oh, maybe we can do that to help. So it's unfolded in an interesting way, I think. And how long that lasts for before it's all back to the normal chaos, I don't know. But it's been quite eye-opening to see that, and quite nice. Not so much on the post side since the pandemic. I think from a remote working point of view, though, I think you can definitely see that that's becoming more prevalent and people are becoming more used to it. Also during prep, so it's, as we are now, conference meeting, file sharing, and that's sort of been quite new for me. I think in the past, when I might sort of collate a series of documents that are in a folder on my laptop, and I'll sit at a desk and scroll through them with a director or whatever it happens to be, whereas now I'm becoming a lot more used to collating all those images in a document, a PowerPoint or whatever, and have to rely on my kids to teach me how to, use all these elements. Certainly over the last few years, the way technology has developed, I think with file sharing and data management and rushes, those workflows are in place now, which is really positive in this time, to know that rushes can be uploaded, examples of work or graded images, if you're having to work remotely. I think the post-production side of being able to access files that's developed over the past few years has definitely come into its own now. It sounds a bit of a cliche, but I think my years as an assistant taught me about teamwork. Especially when you go in as sort of a young, keen person, and all of a sudden you see the scale of it all, and you realise the amount of effort and the amount of people that have gone into that moment, where as a loader, you clap those two bits of wood together and it's all geared towards that split second. And so you kind of, it was the teamwork and the camaraderie. So that was something I always took from those jobs. There was a cinematographer called Harvey Harrison who gave me my first job as a trainee on 102 Dalmatians. He was a specialist in second unit cinematography. So from him, I learned a lot about analysing an image. It's his job to replicate what a scene or a shot that the main unit had done. So he would look at rushes or images and be able to know where light sources came from. So that was a real eye-opener for me. Seamus McGarvey, I learned a lot from on Nowhere Boy about creative composition and telling a story with a camera, that you don't have to have close-ups. It's about developing shots, and that composition and lighting can tell you as much about a person as a close-up. And Hoyter, again, as you mentioned on Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, he was just really welcoming with his crew, I found, as a second assistant camera for the DP to talk you through his mood boards and explain his process and why he wants to do something is really inspiring. So yeah, those guys, and I'm still in touch with them and drop them a line and speak now if I'm needing advice. You never stop learning, and yeah, those guys have always been there. it's always the struggle, to kind of maintain that. That's the aim. And I think the only way really is prep. I think that's, it's putting as much work into that prep period as possible, because that's before it starts raining. It's before the actor needs to catch a plane. That's when you don't have time restraints, and you can really develop that look and your approach, so that when you're on set and when things inevitably change, the creative parts are kind of ingrained in you and it becomes a second nature. So really working through prep is something that helps. And then during the shoot, I'll always go back and reference the images that we looked at during that time, to kind of go, oh, that's it, that's what we were after. And also for me, nothing to do with images, but it's music. So um, even like before I'm on a job and I'm reading a script, there'll be certain pieces of music or songs that jump out at me as set a particular mood or tone. So I use those, and they kind of act as triggers. So even when I'm on set and I'm lighting, I will sometimes put my headphones in, and it's like a trigger and reminds me of what it was we were after. And that works for the crew as well. For me, I'll play that piece of music to the grip and sort of say, this is sort of the speed of the track, or the gaffer to say, this is kind of how moody we're thinking. And so those elements, through prep and reminding yourself of what that vision was. And it's always nice when you come to post-production, because obviously you want that vision to be maintained throughout the course of the shoot. But when it's, you're running out of light, you've got 3 pages of dialogue to shoot in an hour, you do think, are we still in line with what we intended? So it's nice when you see an early assembly, or when you go into the grade and you look at those original notes, and then you kind of think, actually, we did manage it. And I think that's because of the prep and really sort of getting to know that story, I guess. And that's one of the exciting things with my job, is the multitude of tools that you have to be able to to tell those stories. I do love the Arri Alexa. I equally love Panavision lenses, but these days with broadcasters and platforms, having very specific requirements as to resolution and format, you do have to be open to using different cameras on a job, and with different cameras and different sensor sizes, inevitably that will limit your choices of lens. So I'm always open as to what it might be, but knowing that I'm happy to use different cameras if I need to, it focuses you and really makes you remember the important thing is what's in front of the camera rather than what's behind it. That's where the look of the film comes from. It's work with the art director, the production designer and the art department, and creating that colour palette, working with costume for colour, with texture, and it's about designing that colour palette, I think, rather than the colour science of a camera necessarily. Without any of that, it doesn't matter what you shoot on. It really does boil down to that. So yeah, I've got I like the lenses I really like, but I try not to think of a story in terms of, I'm always going to shoot with this camera. It will be what the requirements are, what's going to work, and also that ergonomics of things, on a technical level. So what's going to be easy for the shoot. It's a dance between the two. I think cinematography, by its very nature, has always been about science. It's, optical engineers developing lenses. It's, guys in laboratories, overseeing photochemical processing, every element from the design of a camera and sensor right through to delivery of a DCP. It's all science and technology. However, in amongst that, and because of it, you have people with a passion to tell a story and to use those technical tools to connect with an audience on a more metaphysical level. And I guess that's where the art comes in, and that's sort of always been my passion. And it's really motivating when you meet people in the technical fields developing, the science parts of it, to find that they're motivated by story. It isn't a case of guys in white jackets. These people are passionate about developing technology, but to see it tell a story and connect. So there is sort of a real crossover with those things. My passion is for the art side of it. I don't get too bogged down in, the data management and the color science. It's easy to get lost in all that. But it's nice to have the support of people that are fully behind that. So yeah, it really is a bit of both, I think. The first thing I do, I think, is, I guess, listen and try and assess what it is that the director's vision is, what they're wanting to tell. And then sort of starting to form my ideas of how I might be able to translate that. As I say, it's not my job to come in and say, this is the look of this film. It is, for me, it's all about that collaboration and developing those ideas. So once you have a grasp of the direction that they want to go, for me, it's a case of gathering together those images. It could be film references, so not from a plagiarism perspective, but just as an example, I guess, of how certain techniques have been done, or certain effects have been successful in the past. But it might be film references, still photography, it could be architecture, it could be people, music, all these different things that might put forward an idea of tone and play into the look of things. And then it's sort of a back and forwards, a director says, I love this element, but what about this? And that's sort of what inspires me, is that collaboration and that conversation to sort of think, oh, damn it, why didn't I think of that? I should be thinking of those ideas. But then also those ideas developing into something else, working with the production designer and sort of coming up with ideas. Other directors will give you an overall tone for their story, and then kind of give you free rein to be able to then run with that look a little bit. You kind of know your limits of what you're going to be allowed to get away with. And as I say, it's sitting down with a production designer and then having fun, running around with ideas and taking them and showing them to the director. So it does depend on the director's process, but for me, it's visual references, physical references around, around us in the world to figure out which way to go. I benefit from surrounding myself with people who have experience and who are great at their job, so if my eye's to the camera, the focus puller might turn around and say, David, on that take, I don't know if you noticed, but, the actor who's off camera did this little look and it might, it looked quite nice. And so you go with that, and you find a new little shot, or the grip might, having seen a rehearsal, might say, oh, maybe if we change this move, it could be technical, it could be creative, it could be logistic, but being open to those suggestions from all grades really benefits the production. And I think when a crew member feels part of that, they want to up their game. They feel like they're being part of something. And so when you're rallying around to get a shot and the sun's going down, they feel like they're part of it. And when I see people do that, I don't want to let them down. So for me, collaboration is key to everything, I think, in what I do. It's brought about perhaps a new style of filmmaking. I think the most obvious thing is people shoot more. They aren't sort of confined by the limitations of the cost of film stock and shooting ratios. So you can do more takes, or you can get more coverage. Whichever way you want to look at it, that's a bonus. It still needs to be treated in the same way on set in terms of the etiquette, in terms of how people work. So I think that's the main difference. Obviously, from a post production side, it's really moved things along because you, well, from on set DIT, you have essentially graded footage. You know, it's not looking at a standard definition video playback feed. It's a high definition image that is color graded. And a lot of people then get married to that. So going through the post production process when it comes to grading at the end of the show, it makes it harder to adapt that. Whereas if people have been doing their edit on one light rushes, they know that that's going to be improved or be more color saturation or whatever. But people do get married to the image now that they see through those digital images. And again, that just puts the emphasis back on the prep and really kind of honing the approach that you want to do before you start shooting. But yeah, there are some which just the camera keeps rolling, and it gives more so the assistant editors, in credit due to them, because they're the ones that are trawling through that footage and selecting the takes themselves. So yeah, I'm sure their workload has been added to. But I also think, people are it's not just the digital cinematography in terms of the image capture, it's like the digital and high definition screens in Video Village on set that people see. The makeup and hair department are now super aware of how their work is photographed. It becomes a lot clearer. There's a bit more collaboration with them on set as well, with costume. The way video reacts with certain clothes and moire effects and what have you. It does make those departments more aware, because they can see straight away, on set what it's looking like. So it can be frustrating because you're trying to concentrate and then you have all these other questions that sort of come to you. But it definitely eliminates the problems afterwards, to get the rushes back and then discover a shot might be out of focus, or, we didn't get a chance to test this costume and now we've shot the rushes and it's not quite working, So the technology definitely has a lot of benefits. And from a focus puller's point of view, those having been an assistant for so many years and seeing the stresses and the sleepless nights that they have, waiting to find out, that the really tricky shot is in focus. Now they know. It doesn't mean that the shots are any less difficult. It just means that they know. We know we've got it. And in some cases, I think that means it makes the cinematographer more daring, with how they play with depth of field, when they think, oh, well, I'm not going to have to wait. We'll see if we can get it, and they can use that as a tool, which is becoming a lot more apparent now as well. So no one's saying go to the cutting room, but you learn so much from the cutting room because you get a sense of the world that you're in. I did a film out in Hungary, Outside the Wire, which just came out in January. And that was a classic example. When the main unit are busy shooting, it's hard to go onto set and interrupt them and say, I was just wondering about this. So yeah, going to the cutting room, watching cut footage, watching takes that didn't get used, why things didn't get used. It gives you a sense of the geography of what you're going to do, and an awareness of what the editor might need or what the editor might want. So yeah, I think it's really useful, and also I think has benefited my work on main unit stuff, to be aware that not so much shooting things for the edit, because I do think that the film is you should have an understanding of where you want to go, so I don't just shoot loads of coverage for the sake of it, but to understand what can get you out of trouble 3 months down the line, I think has been really handy. What we've experienced in the last year, as we were saying, I do think will play into how the film industry goes forward. Fingers crossed and touch wood, there might be a light at the end of the tunnel with the control of the virus and how we can push forward with film production. And it's great that so many productions have been able to go ahead. But I think as I say, there's elements that will become more a part of film production. So with post-production, with the data management and file sharing, and that will benefit the industry. I've seen it in terms of collaborating with people overseas. It's, video conferencing has been around for ages, but the fact that everyone's sort of second nature to people now, that people are more open to it. So I've been able to connect with, filmmakers in different parts of the world that I never would have been able to. So it's made the possibility of collaboration a lot more possible with different peoples. So they were for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter theme park in Orlando. And I mean, I can't even begin to understand the imagination and the creativity that come from the Universal Orlando team and the visual effects team at Double Negative. It's absolutely incredible what they come up with. So those first rides, I've done a number of them now, but Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts was a roller coaster which, on its journey through a series of practical sets and tunnels, then takes you into, I think it's 7 cinemas, onto which, with sort of 100 and odd degree wraparound screens, onto which this short film unfolds that takes you on this adventure through the vaults of Gringotts Bank. There was also the Hogwarts Express, which was what they call a connector ride. It's a physical replica of the Hogwarts Express that takes you from one part of the theme park to another, but outside the windows, rather than seeing Orlando, they sort of developed these screens and projectors outside the windows to show you the journey from King's Cross to Hogsmeade Station. So with those, it was a combination of plate photography around the UK, around London, through the woods in Hertfordshire, up through Yorkshire and Scotland, which then were pieced together with thousands of high-res images and full CG builds to create that world outside the window, into which we then placed the cast of Harry Potter, who we shot against green screen at Warner Brothers Studios in Leavesden. So that was the one that won the VES award. With the Harry Potter project, it was the camera moves were very specific. The nature of the project meant that the movement of the camera had to replicate the twists and turns of the roller coaster itself. Similarly, the turns of the train. So it was a motion control camera rig. If the roller coaster starts high and swoops down past the actor on your cinema screen, that's the camera move that you're replicating, and it's all programmed into sort of, the inch. It's absolutely incredible. So on a lighting scale, it's sort of a big number to deal with, because you're sort of sweeping around 180 degrees around the cast. And then, it is actors' performances that you're getting. So once the green screen is lit, it's then recreating that world around the actors. Now, because that world doesn't exist, you don't have a set of, the Great Hall or whatever, it's a CG build. So it was a case of collaborating with the art directors in Orlando, who were creating the physical space that this would be shown in, and with the visual effects department to sort of create your lights in a way. So if you're in a cave, it would be, well, can we have a flambeau here? This is where I want the motivating source to come from. We have, is there a hole up in the top of this cave where there might be a beam of light coming down? Even though it's not there, we're in this green screen stage, but it was thinking about how that geography will work and making sure that the colours would work in the real world in Florida. If I've got a lava river, and I'm recreating that colour or flames or lightning strikes, can they create that with their interactive lighting in the theme park itself. I think it's really exciting, and funnily enough, I was just last week. I did a little sort of stop motion animation with my daughter. She was bored during half term, and we kind of recreated that. We got the TV screen, and we got like some little Lego, and sort of got a virtual background, and then did this animation in front of it. I think it's fascinating because you can, in those situations, pick the ideal location. You can get the perfect time of day and the perfect light, and you're not limited by that magic hour light disappearing in 15-20 minutes. You can shoot it for 12 hours, and then at the touch of a button, you're midday. So I think that's really exciting. I think the actors will enjoy the interaction with something more physical, to give them that geography rather than it being a green screen. So there's definitely a lot to be said for it, and lends itself to the creativity of filmmaking. Part of my passion for my job is the achievement, I think, that collaboration leads to. So yes, the sun's going down, and yes, we really want to get that that magic hour scene. And it's when you see the team making that work, it's that sense of achievement that I really enjoy. I did a little bit with NCAMs where you through the camera's eyepiece, you can see an imaginary, it could be, a monster, from being broadcast, sort of streamed from a live a motion capture performer elsewhere. So that brings a new dynamic as an operator as well, from rather than trying to imagine, this snake coming at the camera, and just trying to figure out where the headroom might be or what have you. With those technologies and with NCAMs, to be able to have something there in front of you, it gives you a different, thing to react to. It makes it a bit more visceral as an operator. So there's definitely pluses for it. And I think it will become a big thing, but it's still a very expensive technology at the moment. So, it's not for every show. It will, but yeah, interesting to see how it unfolds.